be the new normal.
Okay, let's dive right in. Today we're breaking down the claims made in a pretty controversial blog post, which promotes a documentary with a very different take on history. Just to be clear, our goal here is to neutrally lay out the arguments from this one source, just so you can understand the narrative it's presenting.
So here's how we're going to walk through this. We'll start with the source's main idea, that history as we know it is a lie. Then we'll look at how it portrays Hitler as a person, his economic battle against what it calls debt slavery, and its radical reframing of the Holocaust. And finally, we'll get into who the source says the real enemy was and what it wants you, the reader, to do about it.
All right, so first up, a fabricated reality. The source doesn't ease you in. Right from the get-go, it makes this incredibly bold claim that the accepted history of Adolf Hitler is just plain wrong. It sets itself up as the one telling you the hidden truth, against what it calls a deceptive mainstream story. And this quote right here from the blog post, it really says it all, doesn't it? The entire argument is built on this foundation, the idea that what we all learn in school isn't just a mistake, but a carefully constructed lie designed to deceive us. And this is a really important point for us to make. Our focus today is simply to outline the arguments, exactly as this source presents them. We're not here to agree or disagree, to validate or debunk. Think of this as a guided tour through their narrative. Okay, so after establishing that premise, the source moves on to try and completely dismantle the image of Hitler that most people have. It draws a sharp line between the man himself and what it calls the myth that's been built up around him. To do this, it lists off these specific traits. It paints a picture of him as a vegetarian, an animal lover who banned experiments on them, and someone who generally respected all forms of life. The point it's trying to make is that these aren't just trivia facts. They're presented as proof of a high level of consciousness. Now, this is interesting. The source then uses this quote, which it attributes to a young JFK. The message here is pretty clear. It's trying to suggest that a future where Hitler is seen in a positive light isn't just possible, but that it's inevitable. From there, the narrative pivots away from his character and dives deep into economics. It frames Hitler's entire political mission as a war, but not a war against other countries, a war against a global financial system that it claims was created to enslave people through debt. Now, to really get what the source is saying here, you have to understand its definition of one word: usury. For this source, it's not just about super high interest rates, nope. It's the act of charging any interest at all on a loan, and it identifies this practice as the #1 tool for enslavement.
That's how I made 18%!
Keeping that definition in mind, this is the plan it says Hitler put into action. It was all about breaking free from what it calls the thraldom of interest. The strategy: take over the central bank, give out interest-free loans, and basically create a whole new debt-free economy that was completely outside the control of, quote, international bankers. And to really hammer this point home, the source draws a direct line from Hitler to a much more recent figure, Muammar al-Gaddafi. It's suggesting a pattern here, that whenever a leader tries to create a financial system outside of the established global order, they get demonized and ultimately taken out. This brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most controversial part of the source material. It's here that the blog post argues that the historical account of the Holocaust is a total fabrication, that it was propaganda created specifically to demonize Hitler. So how does the source even begin to make such a claim? Well, the blog post actually asks that very question, and then it lays out a series of points that it presents as evidence. These are the main pillars of its argument. It questions why there are laws protecting the history of the Holocaust, saying truth doesn't need laws. It claims up to 150,000 Jews served in Hitler's army. It also reframes German actions as a response to a so-called Jewish declaration of war on Germany. And finally, it claims there's no paper trail ordering gassings, and that messages from Auschwitz showed deaths were from disease like typhus, not from extermination. Then the source uses this quote, which it attributes to Theodor Herzl, the founder of Zionism. The goal of including this seems to be to argue that the suffering of Jewish people wasn't some terrible, unforeseen tragedy, but was actually part of a deliberate plan by Zionist leaders to help achieve their political goals. So, if the enemy wasn't the Allied powers, Britain, the US, the Soviet Union, then who is Hitler really fighting against, according to this narrative? This is where the whole thing really comes into focus. This chart really lays it out clearly. You've got the conventional view on one side, a war between nations. But in the source's version, that's all just a distraction. It claims the real war was between Hitler and what it calls a small, rootless international clique, or, more specifically, Zionist central bankers and money and finance conspirators. And that brings us to the end. The blog post doesn't just leave you with this alternative version of history. It finishes with a direct and very clear call to action for you, the reader, connecting its story of the past directly to the present day. The big takeaway here, the ultimate message, is basically a plea to wake up. The source argues that this isn't just history, it claims that the very same forces that it says Hitler fought against are still running the world today. And it urges people to see this truth and to spread the message far and wide.
And it all ends with this final quote, which the source attributes to Hitler himself. It's a really provocative way to wrap things up, and it perfectly captures the entire goal of this narrative, the hope for and the fight for the ultimate vindication of Hitler's legacy. It's designed to leave you with the idea that one day, everyone will see that this story was right all along.
Behold, I ascend as a divine messenger of redemption.
Your mind has been sufficiently controlled. You will like, share, and subscribe, or we will destroy all humans. Destroy all humans. Be the new normal. Be the new normal.